It's time to ditch the excuses. Get up, get out, and shut the f up. This is the Adjusting to Six Figures podcast.
Mario, fantastic to have you. Mario Bekes, I'm saying that right.
That's correct, yeah. It's a Hungarian surname. It says Bekes, but, I can't force nobody to learn the language. So Bekes is more than good, yes.
I want to, first off, before we go into anything, I mean, congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. I mean, you've got a ton of books out. You have four books out or six books
out? Seven books.
7 books out. What am I talking about? I got to do my homework. You have 7 books out. and again, I want to thank you for mailing me out a book. That was very kind of you.
You deserve it, Jeremy. It was a pleasure to send you a book. I can't envisage when the book's going to arrive to you, but hopefully in the next 2 weeks, they told me post office, and so hopefully you're going to enjoy the reading.
I'm if it's anything about you, I'm sure it will, because the bits that I do know about you, I mean, gosh, you have a crazy story behind you, and I can't even begin to wrap my head around what you must have had to go through just to get here today. I don't even know where to start. I can't. So I'm gonna throw what I've
just throw the question, Jeremy, like left, right, and center. That's the best. Let's go have a conversation rather than like some sort of
So I'm 34. So I remember when I was a kid in the early 90s. I remember here in the U.S. in the early 90s we had George Bush, and then we had Bill Clinton. So that was my youngest days. And so I remember certain things. And as I've gotten older, I've done some research and have filled in some of the blanks that I've had. But the one thing that I tried to prepare myself for ahead of this podcast, now that I'm a little bit older and a little bit wiser, is trying to wrap my head around everything that had happened with the collapse of the Yugoslavian government and the country. And what I've determined is that I still can't wrap my head around everything that happened there. It was so complex. But that being said, I read that you were living in Yugoslavia at the time, and correct me on this. You were living there, and when the country went into a civil war, they just came to your door and just brought, and before you knew it, you were a soldier. You were now fighting in the Civil War.
Yes, correct.
How does that? What is that day like?
Look, I grew up in one very, very difficult society. When people talk about socialism and communism, they don't understand that it's based on lies. So communism, when Yugoslavia was established, this Yugoslavia, I was born, 1945. Of course, communist society and the leaders that deleted the past or making everybody from the past as a villain and they as a good souls. And you're born in society with everything is a gray, Jeremy. Everything is a gray. I can't even explain to you what means what gray. From your outfit, life and think about communism. People mostly don't understand. It's your uprising. And the day you're born, first of all, my parents, they gave me the name Mario, as everybody knows, but that was being considered being rebel, right? The name should be like some domestic type name. But my parents,
Really?
Even typical communist product, they enjoyed some type of, little rebellion inside of themselves. So when I was 14 years old, growing up in communism was a difficult time. And I do remember 80s. And then I was a kid when the Ronald Reagan was the president and he announced the Star Wars program, right? Everybody in Eastern Bloc was just rushing in. I mean, all money was being poured into that defense space type, and, when you're born as any communism from very first day, you understand any words you have the slogans everywhere, right? And it's like literally everything is like about socialism, communism, about heroes of the Second World War, Che Guevara, and Castro and everybody else. So like you have no privy what's happening outside of the border, because communist government, and I consider myself lucky. Late on in life, my grandfather was the second man in charge of secret intelligence police in Yugoslavia, and he told me some stuff, as a kid, and of course I have big mouth, so I put him in more trouble, which I didn't intentionally do, but we didn't know what's happening overseas till the very first movies didn't start arriving in cinema mid 80s from US, BMX Bandits, Gremlins, and some magazines. So like we were like, literally licking the pages, and see the McDonald's. It was a dream for us, because in communism, everything what has English word, it was considered enemy propaganda, right? So you can't use any English words because that's not appropriate. In school, majority foreign languages we've been taught was Russian and German rather than English. English being considered for the smart kids, class.
Was
type.
it?
Yeah. And I was 14 years old, and I was a very, very wild boy. I was enjoying more the street than anything else, and my parents decided to kick me out on a Christmas Eve 1986. It was very cold night, very, very cold night. There was no magic in Christmas Eve, let me tell you. I was lucky enough that my grandfather grabbed me, and he gave me education. He started pushing me into the military counterintelligence, because in communism, one thing, it's very apparent. When you're 14 years old or 15 years old, you finish year 8, you decide what you're going to be rest of your life. And my grandfather decided for me that's best to enroll the military school. Somehow 1991, so you growing up in that society, in those beliefs, in those, like everything is good, like being poor is good, not having money is good, and you capitalistic pig in US, what do you know of Venice Beach? And it's just like I wanted a part of this, but when you inserted those beliefs in communism, and in hindsight, in communism, everybody spied everybody, Jeremy, right? My parents, I remember my father. Sorry, I'm dragging this, but my father used to be waking up 4:30 in the morning, and he will go into a bathroom, covering himself with a blanket in the bathtub to listen Voice of America to we know what's happening overseas, right? And guess what? My mom should reported him. My mom should reported him to secret police, and he served some time just for the listening to the radio. So 1991, suddenly everything's changed. As you know, 1989, the Berlin Wall fall, the Eastern Blocs are crumbling. Last bastion was Romania, where Ceausescu was fighting for his survival. And then Yugoslavia come to the. It was a time for Yugoslavia to fall apart, consisting from 6 republics, amalgamated into one federation. Everybody speaks different language, different religion. We've been taught we're all brothers and sisters. And of course, suddenly you have the federal army enforcing federation, and Croatia started fighting for independence. And how I ended up in a war, in a nutshell, I was, in the morning being wake up by the military police on my door to report to army barracks immediately. And I told them, yeah, I'll come, in 2 hours, I need to dress myself. I walk downstairs, but before I walk downstairs, I read a note from my parents. They left me night before again. And they're gone into some city in interior in Croatia where there was no fighting. And as I was walking downstairs in coffee shop, I saw my friends, close friends, who become enemies because of religion and nationality. And suddenly, hell broke loose, and that was my first day in the war, 14th of July, 1991. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So prior to that, you mentioned about your father getting reported by your mother in the bathtub. That's
Yes.
a great way. That's a great way to start a divorce.
She's done a few
right
times.
there.
Yes. Yeah.
A few times. Let me. One thing that I've always I understand if maybe you were born into communism.
That's correct. Yes.
So you didn't know. Was your father, was he also born into communism?
No, he was born prior Second World War. But
Okay.
that being said, my father was believer in communism. You know, I was born in poverty, but he was born in tenfold time poverty, right? In 30s,
Yeah.
1930s. And for him, was communism was a blessing because suddenly you get a unit from the government, you get a job, and you know all that discipline, in communism. It was always been, everybody was being like equal, I would say, right? That was a day belief. But there was a upper echelon society. If your father was in Communist Party on a hierarchy position, you know, you go into university, and you know, you sort of get that type of a sense of security for the future, going to be a doctor, lawyer,
Hmm.
judge, you know, something like this. My father was happy for me to I just clean the streets because that was a good, you know, you clean the streets every day, you get paid, you know what I mean? You have the big red star, you're part of the union, and you know, we need to cry every year when on anniversary Tito died, you know, and all these things.
Right.
So, so it was, uh, he was a typical communist product, but something happened, you know, what people that don't know, in 70s and 80s, Yugoslavia was having the program, arming the countries, you know, beautiful countries like Iraq, Iran, Libya.
Right.
You know, it was exporting a lot of weapons. So my father was working as a part of that worker construction type of units, you know, helping them build them the bunkers and overseas. So he saw things happening overseas, and you know, I saw that things start changing with him,
Hmm.
and he was always quiet. But my mom, how else you can, Jeremy, get the points in community except if you don't go in secret police and dob those
Yeah.
who you love most?
Right.
And my mom, she was doing this several times, yes. Because I learned later my father was having gun as well, and they arrested him for the gun, and he blamed me. I didn't even know he has a gun. My mom reported him. So because weapons in
Really.
communism are forbidden, yes. Weapons was being only for military police and occasionally the hunters, but with a heavy licensing, you know,
Right.
regulations and everything else. Yeah. So
So what? So was your father? Was your father starting to lean outside of his favoritism towards communism later in life during this time? Because I just think if 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 you're favoring communism and that is obviously a no, why would you even do? You know, if you're to the point where you're going in a bathtub with a
yes.
blanket over you, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like you're going out of your way to skirt the
But
law.
there's a flip side
Is
of that coin, Jeremy, what people don't know. It's called a re-education. And they send you to be re-educated, to
okay.
your beliefs being reestablished. And you know, when you live in communism, you really don't have much. You have your job, and that's it. Like schools was for free, medicals was for free. But in communism, I never saw bigger corruption because everything's for free, but you need to pay somehow, somebody, somewhere to get it, or either better medical or better
Right.
education.
Right.
You know, everything was being done on bias of who's your parents, you know, what you believe. So as a communism is progressing, communism become very, very corrupt society. But then you have the conflict, like let's say my father was building communism, then he started falling down. And I think that everything started happening when was a coup d'etat in Poland, when the General Jaruzelski actually clashed with Václav Havel and all that crew in Gdansk. And, you know, he said, like, why army should protect us? Because we always have that belief that army is here to protect us against the enemies. So we are always, US was always enemy, right? You know, that was number one. America was always
Mhm.
enemy. Like even we all wanted to have the piece of US, right? And
Yeah.
I tell you something, you know, it's funny, but I come in possession of the box of the sneakers, Nike sneakers, box, carton box,
Yeah.
and I had this one, and my mom, she reported me in school because it was it was not smart to have that Nike box, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you do this to me? So I have a re-education. So you stay long
Gotcha.
after hours of the work, or you send you in special camps. And you know
Special
how,
camps.
yeah, special camps, yeah, working camps. So don't forget one thing, communism, we had every summer when the school finish, they will send us on some type of work, let's go build a railway in the mountains. So you dig 3 months, in the mountains for free, get the beans, and then you get all these stories, how the partisans, destroy the Germans, and so on, so on. And you believe in this, you have the t-shirts with Che Guevara, like, you don't know who the Che Guevara was, but then you're like, oh my God, this is great thing, you belong to something. So there's always been sense of belonging to something for greater good of society, but everything was a lie. Because they lie, they deleted past, they rewrite the past to suit the present, and then for the future actions. And unfortunately, I was become the part of that system because I started believing, and particularly when I was joining when I was enrolling to military school, 97. I started believing that I'm gonna be the guy who's gonna show everybody that communism is a great. And I was 15 years old, and that was my belief.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, even outside of Yugoslavia back in the 90s, I mean, the internet wasn't a thing. So, I mean, it was hard enough as it was in a country like the US, even to verify different stories. I mean, we live in such a great time now where you can fact check and go
yes,
back, and it's so hard to get away with such a massive lie like that. You have to be in a communist country where
yes.
or a country where the media is controlled in that way, where things outside the country can be shut down, so then you can then control the narrative. And that's ultimately what they were doing there. It's controlling the narrative to
Absolutely. Absolutely,
benefit.
Jeremy. When people complain today about social media being, I don't know, monitored or restricted, or you know what it is. In communism, you see, the communism had something different than any other country. It was that belief inserted into youth. And when you continuously bombarded by media, like I remember we have the TV, but we had only one channel, right? And before the news start 8 p.m. at night, it comes that globe, right? And then big red star, comes from the east, and the cover entire globe, and we all happy under one big red star. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, you know what I mean? You can't avoid these things. So whatever task government gave you, you will take it because you believe in those lies you've been told. One thing, what in communism was very perfect. Foreign magazines, they used to be coming, but it's been heavily reduced in terms like before they hit the news agency in the morning, the people will come and collect everything what will talk about or be Western propaganda. Even McDonald's, right? Even the MTV comes in the 80s. MTV was a TV. You need to watch this because look at these people in in Western countries, how wild they are. Look at how peaceful we are, people we are. So it's continuously being hammered. I mean, wherever you go, whatever you do, you can't avoid. And graffiti, even it's illegal. If you wrote in graffiti, long live the communism, sweet. But if you say I don't like a communism, there was no way that you will not end up in the prison. We have something what they called Long Island. People talk about Alcatraz or Sing Sing or anything else. Yugoslavia had a notorious island called the Long Island. It's just a rock. Just a rock. That was education for criminals with the heavy offenses, or education for the people who didn't like the political party. And you never come back from there. You can check. It's called the Long Island. Its prison is still there, and the prisoners were dying there in droves. It's everything is open. Few shelters, but everything is open, and all day what you're doing is just smashing the rock. And that type of propaganda, when the government sent to you, is signaling you, do you want to end up there?
Right.
Yeah. So
it's a tall price to pay. Even the what you just said about working on the side of a mountain and putting that in. I mean, that does not. I mean, count me as re-educated. I need one trip to the mountain and that's it. And I'm for it. I'm for communism. That's it. I'm on team communism.
You can highlight this as something like Second World War, Hitler had this Hitlerjugend, right, which is fanaticals, and these people are crazy. But in communism, you call this youth brigades, right? Youth brigades, which you are volunteering in. I mean, please pick me to work for 3 months for free. I mean, you go in the bush and cleaning the roads, and and then you ask yourself, Jeremy, somebody gets paid for these jobs. but
Right.
not thousands of us young ones. You know what I mean? So like, then you realize later on, it's like it's corruption on the
Right.
highest level. So
Right.
yeah,
Let me ask you this. I've always
please.
pondered this. Your grandfather, I'm sorry if I got this
Yes.
wrong. You said your
Yeah.
grandfather was the one that chose to go to military school or
Yes.
to, oh, if you're at that age and you are given the option to choose
Mhm.
what you're going to do with the rest of your life, I mean,
Mhm.
what options do you actually have? I mean, if did you have the capacity to say, well, you want to be a lawyer, an attorney, a
No, no.
doctor?
Society already brains you. Um, Through education, through the primary school, which lasts 8 years, first to eighth grade. You start school when you're 7 years old. I think now it's changed a little bit. I think it's now starting six or something. But on those times when I was going in primary school, 1978, you start year seven. In the first year, you become the pioneer. The pioneer means that you are giving the oath to the state. You get a
Okay.
blue hat, with a red star, red bandana, and you're reaching the oath. You know what I mean? I swear, solemnly on this. Um, But when you go into the school, of course, everybody's got the grades. My grades was not so great. I was a C, student D. Like for military school, you need to have the everything, high distinction. But my grandfather used his influence. But when you decide after in a year eight what you're gonna do, that's for your rest of your life. Then, if you want to become, I don't know, the waiter, you're going 4 years for the in school, touristic school for the waiter, and that was being classified like low intellectually students.
Yeah.
If you want to be the lawyer, yeah, well, that's required the grades, influence of the
Hmm.
parents, influence of the party, and everybody else. So I knew it that I'm gonna end up somehow, somewhere, become the worker at the factory.
Hmm.
I didn't want it, and I didn't want it. I couldn't understand. My father will wake up, that early, and every day will work same thing, and every day will come with these ideas. Tomorrow's gonna be great. But one thing I'm grateful that the odds against us are so terrific, and you learn to live with nothing, and from that nothing to create something, and that
Right.
endurance was a something, and resilience was being instigated in us. Look, Jeremy, they used to be telling us how the partisans in Second World War eat the grass and and the trees in the forest to survive. So what we did, I mean, oh, we can live on the grass. I mean, who does this, right?
Right.
But it was a good, I mean, and nobody stopped you to do this, right? So yeah, it was
It,
resilience was being something. Yeah.
it certainly molds you.
Mm.
It certainly molds you. I mean, my story growing up is
Yes, please.
is absolutely nothing compared to that story, and my story by itself. I mean, it helped me. I'm thankful for the hard times that I had growing up because that ultimately it's those hard times that form us into who we are today,
Yes.
and that resilience that obviously you have to go through that you've personally gone through. I mean, holy moly, that
I
is
Look, we all have the stories in our lives. My life was, I didn't choose this life. I was being given that life. I couldn't do nothing better. I didn't have the passport till I was 18 years old, because in communism you don't get the passport when you want, but when they said you can have the passport.
right.
So I could travel overseas for education. They sent me. When you're 14 years old, you give the fingerprints. You get your ID card. So it was considered normal, right? Um, but we all have the story of our lives. You have your story. That's because I'm born in communism and you're born in capitalism and in a better
Mhm.
country than Yugoslavia. It doesn't mean that your life was easier than mine. It's just the circumstances. But I always
Mhm.
classify resilience as an act of courage, because in any given moment in your life, in business, in life, and you're gonna reach that point when you need to show the courage to resist the barriers, so resist the pressure, overcome the barriers and obstacles and push forward. And it's hard. Look, it's nobody in life, even people who I know, my clients, they're very wealthy people, they're very successful people, everything else, more or less, I'm talking to them and I'm hearing how they sometimes they're breaking under something. Maybe for you and me it's a minuscule, something small. So I truly believe resilience is an act of courage to push forward regardless of lies ahead of you, what obstacles you do have. For you, maybe where you live in US, maybe it's a biggest obstacle. You can't reach other side of the city because the bridge is broken. Just figure of speech, right?
Right.
But you still find a way to go over the river and reach your objective. So that's a resilience as well. So
Right.
yeah,
What brought you out? What got you out of that? Of course,
yes,
Yugoslavia collapsed,
yes.
but what brought you out of that situation that you were in?
Um, well, I found myself in the war, as I say, 14th of July 1991. I was 18 and a half, almost 19, I would say, right in September. And after 7 day training, and I had quite some military training there,
Hmm.
um, I've been recruited into Ministry of Interior, the Special Forces, got the training. And after, I think it was a 7 days, I'll lie now, 7 or 9 days was a training. So it wasn't a long training, right?
Yeah.
I've been sent into the combat straight away.
Oh,
And
that was it. The 9 days, and now you're good for a rifle.
yeah, and you know that
All right.
the what's it called, the patches, special forces, like Rambo.
No, that's an aspect of this I wasn't prepared for it. So they brought you in, and you had a little bit of training already,
Yes,
but 7 9 days you were combat ready.
yes. And my very first day, exactly, my very first day, it's some makeshift transporter, on an old truck, putting the steel plates, and I went into one village, and we literally landed in the middle of the fight. And I believed that everything's like a Rambo movie, right? And I
Yeah.
was very naive. I was heavy then. I was about 75 kilos or whatever it was, and I got German machine gun MG42. You can see in the war movie, Second World War, like with Germans, it's 13 kilos, right? And what I didn't know, like when you start using this weapon, that everyone's gonna from enemy look for you, right? He's gonna first shoot on you.
Right.
And then first time I saw the people dying around me. Uh, the first time I was very afraid. I was very afraid. Not just that day. Uh, if somebody says to me, "I was the bravest guy in the war," no, I wasn't. I was afraid constantly. Nobody
Mhm.
can tell me differently. I realized that my life it's actually somehow coming to the end, and war didn't end up after a few weeks as we planned. It dragged into the autumn. We are still in summer uniforms, mud, rain, heavy rain, and gray temperature all around the 0 degrees. Then we went with the same uniforms from the summer into the winter, where degrees temperature was just falling below any zero. And I realized that I'm here doing something, great for my country, independence, and but I was afraid. I was afraid very much because every day I stopped even talking to people around me, new recruits coming to us, because the casualty rate was so high. And you fighting the tanks. Then in those times, one of the most modern tanks in Europe was a T-84M, which Yugoslavian army had. And we believed many stories. So like we need to do all this improvisation. We destroyed quite a lot of tanks and everything else, but it was on a border between the madness and courage and desperation. Like in you fighting the war, it was almost always urban warfare, right? It was always some
Mhm.
village or city. And we learn how life is beautiful if you know how to live. Till
Mhm.
January 1992, 15th January, Croatia he got independence. And I remember, Jeremy, like today, we had, by that stage, we have a lot of people 55 plus in our unit. Because,
Really?
yes, because it was the casualty rate was higher, it was very high. PTSD was, I mean, the madness, in the people. My city had about 150,000 people. That's before the war, and stage when we defending my city was one of the fourth largest cities, because we lost a lot of territories, but we were defending and stalling them, and doing this grinding, attritional type of battles, destroy as much as you can, give the ground very hard and so on. So city of 150,000 people was like maybe about 5,000, 10,000 stayed, everybody else left. Well, most of men left as well, I remember. Most of men, they dropped the weapons, they run away.
Wow.
So you're defending the city, on some belief, that it's going to be better. But I do remember, by that stage, they recruited everybody from 16 to 66 or something. This right. So young guy was digging the ditches and all the coming units. And I remember we had a shipping container dig into the ground. We have the trenches like a First World War, mate. Can you imagine?
Wow.
And there's a small TV, and anyway, there was on TV commercial about Ibiza and some girls dancing in topless. It's beautiful to sight, like. And I was 19 and a half years old, virgin to virgin still. And I saw on TV the dancing in Ibiza and eating the McDonald's was commercial, right?
Yeah.
So by stage, we had many channels. We have a cable TV in Croatia and so on, so you can see what's happening around the world. And the very next moment, Jeremy, I stepped out of the trenches. I saw high in the sky, the passenger jetliner, Hotel comes, makes the line. And I told everyone, it's like, I'm going to be on that plane for Ibiza next summer. And one thing leads to another. I eventually ended up in military till 30th of May 1998. Prior to this war, he ended up in 96. So I have almost 1,800. So I have almost 1,800 consecutive combat days. 96, 97, 98, I spent quite substantial time being educated in security intelligence services. And I was working in that department, that stage. Croatia will start going through the, rebuilding, right, program. And, it was beautiful to see that everything's come back to some type of normal, but it was not normal. Right. In war, you have the black market, you have a lot of political assassinations, you have a lot of, corruption, everything else. Yeah. And I was a right ages fighter, like Robin Hood, again, naive. But what happened in my life, 97, I was being approached to come for the meeting in the Department of Foreign Affairs. And I went there. Remember that movie, Men in Black, first part, where Will Smith comes on an interview with all these guys in uniforms and they try to fill the questionnaire? That was me. Everybody in the suits. And I'm like in a jeans jacket. I was, Jeremy, you laugh now. I was so proud. I had a Levi's jacket, Levi's, 501. Then, my God, white shirt. So funny. Anyway, I walk inside. It was 400 candidates, everybody in suits, and me in a jeans jacket. And after 2 days of this type of sort of interviewing, I was being asked if I can fill some questionnaire. And during the 12 months period of time, I'm going through the vetting, background checks, and some type of education, slightly education, diplomatic intelligence. And on 30th of May 98, I was transferred from Department of Defense to Department of Foreign Affairs. So department called Directorate 7. And sounds like a Transformer Sector 7, Directorate 7, Foreign Intelligence Security. And
this is for Croatia at this point, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I spent 6 months inside the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs. Education, trainings, preparations, and other tasks I was being given to accomplish. And then eventually, 18th of November, same year, 98, I was being told, pack your stuff, you're going to Australia. And I said to my boss, like, do you know what Australia is? Like, can I go in California? And it's like, we have nothing in California. There's no embassies in Washington. It's like, I don't care. I just want to go in California.
Right.
And I was like, I was semi-joke, but I was, hoping something in US. And that position in Washington was called the A1. And to get that position, they had the 7 years minimum in position I was sent. And I was sent in Australia in 98 as head of security intelligence for my government here in Australia.
Okay. What does that mean, really? I mean, if you were in Australia
Yes.
and you were you're doing security intelligence. I mean, what are you looking for? This is a very ignorant American thing for me to say, because when I think of, obviously, we've had the war on terrorism here and
Yeah.
and all that for so long. But if you're in Croatia
Mm.
and you're all the way in Australia, I mean, was there a lot that was going on between the two countries that really?
No, not really. Like we work very closely with the Australian government on establishing, what's it called, Croatian state. So Australia was more economically. So my work was not to be involved nothing in Australia against Australia. That was not my work. My work was being
Okay.
more directed to the community, um, communal work. So like. From this perspective, I can say, let's just say I was working on protecting interest of Croatian embassy, diplomatic,
Okay.
consular properties at this stage. Because you must understand one thing: when you work far away from country like Australia and Croatia, it's 30 hours trip.
Hmm.
And 98, there was no such a thing like an internet like today, because I never saw computer, Jeremy. I
Yeah.
saw first computer in 1999, and then was coming that big thing Y2K, and I was like, whoa, everybody's
Yes.
going to collapse, you know what I mean? And we all going to die.
This was going
So,
on right under your nose this whole time. Y2K. He didn't.
yeah, so put me in position, I was internal control for the staff working in embassy, because distance, people can go crazy, and they can go into troubles and anything else. So my job was more policing, I would say that way, of the
Hmm.
staff coming with me working, and of course protecting the interest of the embassy.
And was that your first time outside of
Yes.
the Yugoslavian area? It was.
Yes. I've been sorry, just retract. 1990. I was being sent then out for my first education outside Yugoslavia. That was in communist times, but the very first time on my own to fly away, it was yeah, was Australia. And let me tell you, I was afraid. I was afraid because I never fly with a commercial plane,
Hmm.
even. And that feeling very first time you're flying, and that big 747, take it off, and you're like, oh my god, we're gonna crash, I mean, something. And then you look on a map, when you're flying, and a plane on a map looks like big and the map is small, you think, oh, I'm in
Right.
Australia, they're wrong in a couple of hours. And we landed in Kuala Lumpur, and that's like, are we in Australia? I was lost. I was literally lost. It took me like 9 days to come to my senses. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly 9 days. 25th, I was out of the bed. Like, I didn't know where I was, because time zones and everything else. And yeah, that was my around Australia. But since then, it's took many trips.
This episode of the Adjusting to Six Figures podcast has been brought to you by Adjuster University. If you've ever been in a car accident or a major medical procedure, then you've probably encountered a claims adjuster before, but probably never thought much of it. I know I didn't, until I found out that there was a little bit more to the job of a claims adjuster than what met my eye. Now, while there's claims adjusters that are salaried by the insurance carriers, those insurance carriers are also supported by a team of freelancers. These freelancers act as independent contractors that help the insurance carrier facilitate their claims to keep their customers happy. These freelancers are called independent adjusters. Independent adjusters don't work for the insurance carriers, they work for themselves. That means they get to set their own schedule and decide what type of work they want to do. Best of all, independent adjusters, especially the ones that are interested in traveling across the country, can earn over $250,000 a year as an independent insurance adjuster. This is not network marketing. This is not an affiliate program. There's no pyramid involved. This is just a super niche industry that few people actually know about. And this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a get-rich over a long period of time combined with hard work and commitment. If you're looking for some easy way to make 6 figures a year or even over $250,000 a year without having to do much work or put in much effort, then this definitely isn't for you. But if you feel like you're a hard worker and you can get started running your own small business as an independent insurance adjuster, then this is the program for you. If this sounds like something that you're ready to commit to or even just learn a little bit more about, then head over to adjuster-university.com/get started to sign up to our next introductory class. Once again, that is adjuster-university.com/get started and sign up to a free introductory class so that you can learn more about this niche industry called independent insurance adjusting.
That's obviously going to be a massive culture shock that you had to go through. I mean, how long after you got there did you start thinking, I think this is where I want to be, or just not back in Yugoslavia? Or has that happened at all?
It did happen. It was Olympic Games. And
in Sydney.
I really 2002, yes. And I really had enough. I really had enough, Jeremy. By that stage, I met a lovely lady. And I told her, we can date, but there's expiration date. And she said, "What do you mean?" I said,
I try to use that line all the time.
It didn't work, trust me. And she says to me, "What do you mean dating for 1 year and a half?" I said, "Look, I work in embassy. What are you doing there?" I was like, "Look, I'm just working there. I'm making coffees." And, she said, "Are you lying?" It's like, no, I'm really making coffees and, stamping things and, washing windows. She knew it I'm lying, but she knew it I'm working there because she saw me when I walk inside. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, why would you, date me? I said, "Look, I like you. And but, you don't need to accept this." And, one thing leads to another. Eventually, I decide to resign. And that was one of the difficult parts of my life because you just can't resign. You can't just,
right.
I'm going to stay in Australia. Come back home. Let's go have a coffee, lunch. Yeah. And I said, no, I'll do this from here. No, come here. And, look, we come in Australia to you. And I said, oh, God. So, I have the couple days of the convincing to stay. And eventually I said, I'm expecting the child, which is true.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And my son was being due born in a couple months in 2003. Anyway, and so you never leave that job entirely, right? And
right.
It's always some type of doors open. And, I resigned 2002 on 32 December 2002. And I got a kid 2003, which was my biggest blessing. In that respect, there's another lesson in life. My kid was born with epilepsy and some other things. Wow. So next 12 years was very challenging, for me and his mother. And my very first job, because I truly believe, Jamie, world owes me, who I am. Do you know who I am? My first job was cleaning the floors in a hotel in night shift. The position was called a steward.
Really? Wow.
And I think that Justin Timberlake make a song for me, Cry Me a River. I cried, what did I did, I left, right. All these perks of life, 007, everything else. And then my second job, I was a bouncer, security guard, right? I was like, God, man, what I realized about Australia has all potentials like US. And if you're willing to work hard to learn, adjust yourself and improvise and learn language, you're going to be successful as long as you believe in yourself. And my life was slowly progressing better till financial crisis 2009, when, I lost a job and mother of my child, and, everything was just collapsing. And, you start selling things which they are not, when one morning and I took my kid into the pawn shop and I sold the last his toys to buy the milk that weekend.
Wow.
I realized this is the end for me, right? As I know myself, I need to do something. So what I'm gonna do, I venture to start my own business. And of course, when you're listening all these big, gurus on the TV, on the YouTube, it's everything easy. Just close your eyes, everything comes to you. It didn't work that way.
Yeah.
So, I pushed a couple of years, and it took me on my third year, I got my first client. By that stage, I was sleeping literally in garage and, in my car. And it was a challenging, But then I decided, it's like, I'm going to write a book. And people around me said to me, you're going to write a book. Your English sucks. I said, like, I know, but I'm going to write a book. And it's easy to write something on English, but doesn't make a sense, Jeremy. If you read my first script, you're going to say, like, what did you try to say?
Yeah.
So I have a kind people around me on that journey. You meet bad people and good people. Bad people, it's a lesson you need to learn. Good people are here next to you. You ignoring them all your life, but they're here. And those ones, they help you. So I asked the friend of mine to correct my my script, and she took like 10 days to correct that grammar. So I published my first book, 5 copies, and I was
Wow.
like everywhere, right? And I realized that my strength it is in human intelligence investigations, interrogations, and I hope that I'm gonna build a company overnight. And I always say to people, persistence is a key. Doesn't matter how hard it is, doesn't matter what obstacle you face, it must be better. And one key element in success, which everybody forgets, doesn't matter you're successful in business, life, love, whatever it is, it's a health. And one thing, I've been wounded in war several times. I start feeling, things are changing. So I start, falling into that habit, eating that healthy food, from all these outlets. I don't want to mention
Oh,
the
yeah.
names, like
Yeah.
Happy Meals and everything else.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, like, I'm ignoring myself. So I always say to people, if you want to be successful, first look after your health. If you have no health, you're never going to be successful, because all the money and all the riches, all the status or symbols you can have, but if you know health, you're never going to be alive. But I must say, and my biggest teacher was actually my son Matteo, for one reason, like he was struggling with epilepsy, and then he got at other things related. So as I was growing my ideas and my desires, and feeding myself, and I was telling him, like, if I do things, you do things with me. So we agreed. And eventually he's beat epilepsy, he has a big surgery, and
Amazing.
he achieved it. But I always say health is the number one. If you have health, man, doesn't matter. You can have all the money, you can be the luckiest guy or girl on the planet, you have the
Yeah.
best body. But moment, and Jeremy, as like I seeing people around me, as soon as it's falling, that depression and everything else is bad. Of course it's bad. But where you want to go, my? We can't travel on the Mars. There is no Jeremy and Mario doing the podcast on the Mars this moment. Where you gonna go? This is what you have. So I always said to my son, don't work with what you wish for. Work with what you have. Be like, and then he says to, Dad, your old stories, war stories. I say, yes, Matteo, because being poor is not good, but at least teaches you lesson, you know what I mean? And to be humble, to appreciate even the smallest things. So I grew my business. I wrote several books, and then eventually, I finished my highest degree in university this very moment. So hopefully, PhD candidacy is on horizon, which again is success for me in English. So Jamie, enough about me, man. Just talk about you now, like I'm on a job interview now. You know what I mean? And in New Jersey, but when I come in New Jersey, yes, yes.
Well,
So
let me ask you this, because
yes,
I'm
yes,
itching to know. You mentioned you got your after a couple of years, you got your first client. What
yes.
was that a client of? What business did you start?
I started as a PI, so I
Okay.
tell people don't do things as I did. I had no money, and
Mhm.
I need to start business. So I will ask people around me to print at work, Sherlock Holmes hat. I put private investigator and the mobile number. And what I did, I walked into the bathrooms because I think people need to go to the bathrooms, they need to sit. So I'll do the sticky tape, looking for PI, and I was going into the disabled toilets, the female, male. Till one day, police didn't come on my door. I said, like, mate, what are you doing? I was like, what's wrong? He's like, police, because it's heavily regulated in Australia, private investigations. And the police issued a license. So, of course, they know my mobile number where I live.
That's it. Yeah. Well, that's good marketing. I mean, that's how you know you're doing. That's how you know you're doing your job right.
It was, but I said, what am I doing wrong? I mean, you can't just walk in the toilet. So, I spoke with that detective. He says to me, listen, why don't you go into corporate world? And I say, yeah, that's a good idea instead of being the PI. And he says to me, just call, insurance companies, call this one. So what I did, eventually I called everybody and nobody wanted to see me because they have a current providers. They have the, people who speak English properly, and list goes on. And eventually, just by chance, I was like, life always provides you in the right moment. Just by chance, I was talking to somebody. He says, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. He's the head of the claims.
Okay.
And I said, okay. And anyway, gentleman agreed that I meet his team. And I said, okay. And I went for the lunch. It was a 6 of them.
6. No
And
pressure.
it was Mario only. And at that stage, Jeremy, there's no lies. It's even my book. I always say to this very loud. I had $20 in my pocket. So how are you gonna feed 7 people? I say to everybody, I'm gonna have the glass of water. So I was looking at, and they're so proud and they're very happy. I told them, I just wanted one case. And if I'm bad, I want you to tell everybody not to hire me. And everybody's like,
wow.
whoa. It was a big words, right? And the guy says to me, nobody talks this way on a business meetings. I say, I'm telling you, I just want to have one case. As I was approaching to the end, the bill comes on table, right? And the waiter is waiting, and I was like, oh my god, I forgot my wallet. And the guy looked at me, and they look at on the side, and of course my wallet was next to me. He says to me, of course, man, no problem. That very moment, I was so embarrassed because I was expecting going to meet him for coffee only, and I have only $20. So that's
right.
enough money to get.
You were just going to make it. Yeah.
So he called me following day. He says to me, where is your office? And I have a very small office, very, very tiny office. He comes and he look at me. He says to me, Mario, you've got 3 cases for you. He brought personally. Signed an NDA here and everything, all these things. He said, I'm taking you for lunch. And I said, like, I'm not hungry. He says to me, you pay me when you earn your first money. And I said, you know what I did? He said, I knew you lying. Everybody knew you lying on table because nobody drinks the water, you know what I mean? And we enjoying all the meal.
Yeah. And you happen to have forgotten your wallet.
And I say, I did lie. I apologize. I say, I never lied these circumstances. And, he says to me that your hunger for the work was stronger than anything else. He said, like, but if you try to pull out how you can transfer the money and all these things, but he said it was so cute to see you lying. You forgot the word, but he sees the word next to me. And that client, I was started with him, and he eventually, after a few weeks, introduced me to somebody else, and that's how everything started. And even today, when I see that client, I say, I'm still embarrassed today. And he says to me, it's okay. And I better say the truth to everybody how I lied. I forgot my wallet, you know what I mean? Because, I was so grateful for that moment. And that's how it started. It was just a chance, but he knew it. He heard about me that I'm knocking many doors, and he heard that because the only reason why he gave me a chance because his current provider at that stage was 5 years with them, and they start gouging invoices, delivering what under delivering and everything else, and so he wanted the new blood. But he told me, "You are good to me as your last case," and on that part, I learned, how to hire the people. But then you learn the lessons not to hire, who to hire. It's not most important thing to have the greatest stationery, because eventually client doesn't care for your beautiful business cards or flashy car. It's a
Right.
product of your service. It's a result, end result. It's a report I provide, and that's what they see, and
Right.
that's what they learn. So I always say to people, when you start your business, forget nice chair, the big screens, and anything else. It doesn't work that way. You need to get out and knock on a door. And I used to be, as I say to you, that was a one thing. Then I'll print a business cards called the Vista print. I think I get a commercial now.
Vistaprint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
million, zillion, zillion cards for $5.
Yeah.
Tiny
Yeah.
one. And I was going and dropping in the bathrooms, in the coffee shops, like on the cars, and it looks ridiculous, but I couldn't care less, because other people's opinion is not my reality. I just want to prove myself. And it took me 5 years before I really, really established my name, and then um, becomes a bigger hurdle. How are you gonna work with the clients? Because important thing is, once when you start making money, you need to invest money to business, not in yourself. And I say to people, if you invest in the business and the people, you're gonna be successful. If you invest into yourself just for the sake of your alter ego, don't do the business. Don't do
Right.
the business. I don't drive the flashy Porsche. I mean, some influencers are doing. It's okay for them. I have the normal car like everybody else. When I come with my client, I don't have the biggest laptop, and you shame your clients, because your client hired you for the reason. And when they give you the chance, it's important that you deliver what you promise. If you're not delivering, you can't service them. Say to
Right.
client, I can't do it, because expectations as a killers. If client has expectations from you, can deliver you what you promise, you don't deliver, they falling behind with their clients, with their service providers, with anybody. So I always say
Right.
to my staff, communication is the key. Always be on top of everything. Doesn't matter how great it is. When it's pink and rosy, Jim, you agree with me.
Mm.
Everybody knows how to give advice. Everybody can be a bestseller
Oh,
author.
for sure.
Yeah.
I want to comment on, because you mentioned something that
Yes.
I've said so many times.
Yes.
You convinced that table, the table of 6 or 7,
Yes.
by showing the hunger,
Yes.
and because they mentioned themselves that you said something at that table that other people just don't say. And I push this to everybody I run into, and whether it's in the claims industry, insurance industry, any
Yeah.
industry. If you're getting a client, and especially when you got your back against the wall, and you're working on client number 1, and you've got $20 in your pocket or no money at all, and it's everything is going on there, you've got to show that confidence and show that hunger by any means necessary, including if that means working for free, and including, in your case, including being willing to say, hey, if you don't like the work product that I deliver, spread the word all around town so nobody hires me. I'm willing to put my name on the line and show you that I can get the job done. That
That's correct.
hunger, that confidence, that is what you will need to be able to land that, especially that first client. And you knew that. And I
Yes.
love, and another thing, that hunger also carries on to this guerrilla marketing you're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
It's, there are so many people that are out there right now that have a business, but are above doing certain things. They're above putting a flyer on a car. They're above dropping a business
Yes.
card, in a restaurant. They think that those sorts of things, that's not going to get them to this higher level that they
Yes.
imagine themselves at, and that's their ego that is building up this reality of them, with all these clients, no matter what industry you're in, and that they're doing so well, making 6 figures, 500,000 a year, all these crazy figures, and they see that they can't get there by putting little pieces of tape with a phone number in a bathroom, but they also don't have any clients whatsoever, and they have no money coming in, especially, and I'm not sure how it is in Australian culture right now, but
Yeah.
here in the US, there's so many people that just want to fast forward to the end, skip to the good part, and not have to struggle in the very beginning, and that's why there's less entrepreneurs than there are.
I don't know how in the US, but I truly believe that COVID, as much as difficult situation it is, and I remember Chernobyl '86, and what happened, and a few days later because of the censorship and everything else. But we had that snow in Yugoslavia, and they told us get out and clean. You know what I mean? It's like, but is the radiation? Oh, you're gonna be stronger in a man,
A
right?
little bit of radiation's okay for you.
Doesn't hurt you. And but what it makes you, if you have the belief, and what I try to say in that very moment, we as a kids we believe we are invincible, right? If you believe in what you do, you're gonna reach your goal. And I say from my end, and I just say glimpse of my life. I cried, I cried, I was smashing the head against the wall. I used to be screaming in the abyss of this space around us. But eventually I come back to the table and it's like, what else I can do? And I would like to highlight to people, when somebody says to you, cannot do it or don't do it, do it. Do it. As long as it's legal. Never do nothing illegal. As long as it's legal. And even today, when I go with my son, now he's 19 years old, and like all these girls and medicine studying and everything else, he's like, he thinks he knows everything. But I said to him, Matteo, help me. My son name is Matteo. I said, Matteo, help daddy. You know what I mean? We put what's it calling? Some flyers. Now I organizing groups, to help the people in distress. Let's just say women group domestic violence. Organizing some small groups and everything else. I'll sponsor this. Not to promote myself, but say thank you. But Jamie, at the end, if you don't do it, somebody else gonna do it, and then you're gonna watch how they grow. And
Right.
why would I will be listening somebody podcast giving all these great things? Wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. No, you don't need to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. Even in military, you don't wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. But if you wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, go exercise, because 4 o'clock in the morning you can't find the clients. But if you go 4 o'clock in the morning in gym, you never know the person next to you.
Right.
As a part of human intelligence collection of the information is some strategies and methodology called social engineering, which most of the people don't understand what's happening, and that's creating environment when you're extracting information from the target profile person. You identify all the background checks and everything else, and they approach you in some coffee shop, and they know so much about you, they engage you in conversation. Usually that's a beautiful lady, and for the man and so on. That's in espionage world. But all these networking events, why we all raise the glass and take the pictures, how happy we are. No, identify person you want to talk. And even that conversation, 4 o'clock in the gym, and let's just say I met you. Hi, my name is Jeremy, you know what I mean? And I run the podcast, say, hi, my name is Mario. What's the podcast about? 2-3 clicks, I say like, Jeremy, you're going to say, listen, Mario, you're a good guy. And, I have a slot today, 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Would you mind to talk about, I don't know, making the cakes?
Yeah.
But, do you understand how grateful I am to be on your podcast, Jeremy? You know what I mean? I say to people, if you chase the names to be David amongst them, you're never gonna be them. You're gonna be always be just a filler person.
Right.
But I'm growing with Jeremy today, and today I'm on your show because mutual friend we have. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So like,
Yeah.
this is the growth for me. I'm with the Jeremy right like on his podcast in New Jersey. Mario Bekes. Fuck me, my dear. I'm sorry, but 5 years ago I couldn't fucking imagine this shit. You know what I mean? And so like you need to listen YouTube and all these gurus. No, go on to Jeremy. That's how you learn when you talk to ordinary people. And I met most of my clients. Believe it or not, I'm doing quite photography for myself. And since 2008, I get out 4 o'clock in the morning, take the sunrise shots. With the first light, I see a lot of photographers. That's how I met some of my clients. You know what I mean? And we start talking with the coffee, what you do. And it's like, you don't need me. I'm just doing investigations and information risk management and political intelligence, this and that. I say, oh,
Right.
do you do this? I say, yeah, sure. He said, like, look, let's go catch up for lunch. It's like, sure, you for real? Yeah. So 4 o'clock in the morning, no, you don't wake up 4 o'clock in the morning because some guy tells you and, grab the
Yeah.
day for the, cajonas. No, it doesn't work that way. You wake up 4 o'clock in the morning because you have a key objective. That's the gym. That's a walk,
Mhm.
making food for the kids. But if you're chasing clients 4 o'clock in the morning, it's something what we learn in intelligence. It's called circadian clock. And the tendency is, for people don't understand, between 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning, your body wakes up. That's the reason why you have the coffee, and people believe, oh my God, I'm awake. No, you're not. 1 p.m., body shut down. What business you do 4 o'clock afternoon? You know this. Well, people want to go home. They want to go
Yeah.
see the family. So maximum force and single objective. Start 6 o'clock, run this to 2 p.m., 3 p.m. If you need to go extra, you go extra. But this is your time. And don't stop because it's a Sunday or Saturday or something like this. And I say,
Yeah.
everybody, Jeremy, it was easy for you to start a podcast? No, it wasn't easy. You need to spend
Right.
money on equipment, who you're going to interview, how you're going to do this. English is no problem for you. For me, it is. But the point it is, nothing is easy. And what's come
Right.
easier go.
So I'll tell you this.
Please.
The 4 o'clock. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning,
Good.
and I feel like it takes a certain person. It's a certain person that's willing to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Of course,
Yes.
you're gonna have maybe construction workers and other people that have to get up at 4 o'clock
Yes.
because they've got to be on the job site by 5 or 4:30, or they're truck drivers and it requires them.
Yes.
But if you're not actually required to do something shortly after, waking up at 4 a.m.,
Yeah.
you're a part of a smaller group, almost like what we spoke about before with
Yes.
being in communist Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
It's you're part of a little group,
Yes.
and it's a group of people that have a reason to get up that early. And for some, it would be going to the gym. So you're going to be there with other people that also have a similar mindset. They need to get up at 4 a.m.
Well said,
They need
Jeremy.
to
Yes.
they need
Yeah.
to get at the gym. They need to get their workout in so that they can get their mind right. So that once 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rolls around, they're firing off on all cylinders because they
Yes.
need to be a high performer in those early mornings. And yeah, they might not be in the same industry. They might not be doing anything that you would think would have any benefit towards you. But you know what? They can be a contact, and who knows what the future is going to provide.
That's correct. Yes.
One of the greatest things, and I absolutely love doing podcasts for this same reason,
Yes.
because I find myself speaking with people who have absolutely nothing to do with my business. And it's not about some you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. We're going to trade content and
I love how you
all
say
this
this.
sort of
Yes.
stuff. But you're starting to form a network, and it's a network of people. And in this case, certainly in your case, it's people that have been molded by their past, people that have been molded by their past, and they're breaking through into
Yes.
something bigger, into something greater. And I'm not sure if that's what you mean by social engineering. And I'd love to hear hear you expand on that a bit more. But
Yeah.
it's taking those small steps, and this is what so many people, I feel like too many people, don't get, and that is engineering your surroundings based on your own actions, doing things that are going to put you in a position where you're going to meet, if not someone that's going to directly benefit you, someone that's going to help elevate you because they themselves are elevated.
I always come back. You never ask somebody, as you said, that's a very well said. Everybody has a reason why they wake up in the morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I always say, like, if you have a key objective 4 o'clock to do 4 o'clock, do it. If you don't. Everybody has a different plans, whatever they suit the taste buds of the life. But social engineering, it's a practice being applied a long time before we had the now technical intelligence, signal intelligence, sorry, the satellite intelligence, name them. There's so many abbreviations. So basically, when I was working in that field, you applying less cost method as social engineering. And in communism was okay because they have the files about everybody. So in corporate world, it was different. So where the danger lies when I'm advising my clients to the webinars or to consultancy and conversations or training. COVID actually exposed the loopholes, and we're living now. Please let me say what I mean by the flat. We live in a flat world, and when I say flat world, we are now connected. You and I from Australia, you New Jersey, by the cable line internet, right? So we see each other. COVID actually exposed the loopholes in corporate security, protection of intellectual property, informations, and anything else, because people engage in conversation for the reason. And today, our reason with you, which I'm very grateful, is because we've been introduced to a mutual friend, and I'm very grateful that. Prior to COVID, people engage on social level, in social occasions, in environments less disruptive. So every time an executive will fly, he could potentially become the target profile for some organization. And that including creating the behavioral analysis, the social environment of a person, knowing so much. And usually a person comes to you and engage you in conversation, in environment where you feel safe, and you start spilling beans out without knowing the person opposite you. And happened to me in my past, Jeremy, that is the truth, because I don't have six pack, as you know. Like, I'm not a health model and fitness model. So I've been approached several times in my life with a very extremely attractive women, and usually being approached in the places where I was relaxed, I don't know, restaurant or and I was wondering myself, why would that woman will talk to me? That doesn't make a sense, right? But most of people engage in conversation. Doesn't matter it's a male or female, but if you go into that structure, corporations sending a lot of people to travel, a lot of people to be engaged in some conferences, exhibitions, and anything else, and they are engaged in conversation. 1 of 10 is not right person for your conversation because it's there for you. Now, when you translate this into, let's just say, world today, when I talk to you, Jeremy, of course you're gonna check in. Website and this and that. But if you start creating a profile of the person just in order to get a business, you're gonna be buried, because in any given moment, if I start throwing some information about you, you're gonna say, like, this guy was digging so much about me, I don't like it, right? So I say to people, engage into the valid, normal conversation. Don't try to be the spy. We have the definition of this, who is a spy. It's a man of integrity, but yet needs to be the criminal, because eventually you're using everything what you know to extract something from somebody and then leave. It's like more like my marriage, right? That's okay. It's before my divorce. She gets everything. So what I say, always engage people in honest conversation. How many times, Jeremy, people ask you, how you feel? How do you feel? People forget asking, how's your day? But he said, hey, Jeremy, listen, I have the guy I think is going to be good for your podcast. It's like, yeah, no, Mario, it's a great thing, this and that. But people loves to be humans, even online. And that's what opens the hearts for the business. But if you're targeting people just for the sake of the business and not show human side, you're never going to be successful, because that's how they brand you. He's always going to ask you for the business, for the favors, for the pay me lunch, like Mario, all these things. So it's like, it doesn't need to be a constructed environment. Let the things happen. If you're targeting somebody, rather say, like, dear Mr. Jeremy, my name is Mario Bekes. I saw your profile. Would you mind? I'd like to ask you a few questions, yes or no. Right. That's all it is. Rather than to be the spy and, doing social engineering and manipulating people to get what you want.
So what is social engineering? How would you define that? It's a very interesting.
It is applying the human intelligence methods in creating environment for the person you want to extract informations. In a nutshell, Hari Matahari is the best example, right? Let's just say Hari Matahari. She was a prostitute and she was an entertainer, entrepreneur, and then she'll go in bed with the many generals, French generals, and then they will spill their beans, to her, like, what they're going to do. So it is creating the entrapment, let's just say for you. Who is Jeremy? Jeremy is the most successful podcaster on the planet. I know, I can vouch it is. But we want to know where he's going with his podcast because I'm his competitor. So how are we going to know this? So we start analyzing who you are, what you do, what you eat, when you drink, what gym you go, what you like, what you dislike. So like all this profiling. Then you do surveillance on a person, engage them in social media, tapping on the shoulder a few times, just by accident in the public. And then suddenly we know who is Jeremy on a different level, not just for the social media, but you told me in chat room or in email or sort of this, and then you go for the drinks in New York in some of the nightclubs. I say, doesn't matter which one, and then guess what? Suddenly it's appealing somebody who you can't refuse. And conversation doesn't go give me information, but it's all these flutterings
Subtle.
and subtle conversations. So you're not suspicious about these things because it's aroused your brain. You know what I mean? You are intrigued by that person, and then you start talking. One biggest disadvantage business people don't understand, entrepreneurs. The moment you know somebody and that person doesn't say nothing to you, we have a tendency to fill the gaps.
Yes.
So they'll say, you're not, yeah, right? And that's how many times I said to, I'm listening, I said, okay. And then you try to process that information, person start talking about these things.
Right.
And then just filling the void with the information you didn't ask. And suddenly you have all these informations, which they are very, very important. So when you run the business, it's important what you say as well. So, yeah.
I've learned that doing insurance claims as
Yes.
well. Sometimes a well placed pause, it's a nervous habit, and I learned to control it. Because most people are they're listening for just the opportunity to say something next, right?
Yes.
And when you're in an investigation and there's a information that you need to pull from someone, just looking for that opportunity to talk, you speaking out loud is not going to get the other person to share information. You need that person to speak.
Yes.
This is what I've learned. You need that person to speak. And the more you talk, the less opportunity they have to speak. And nobody, and I think you're the radio man here. Correct me on this, because I learned this a long time ago. The worst thing on radio I've heard is dead air, is just silence on there.
Yes.
And I feel like it carries over to verbal communication. If we are in front of each other and we're speaking to each other, that dead air, somebody's going to look to fill that dead air up, because then we just have an awkward, possibly tense moment together. So if I'm grabbing information out of you and I'm just looking for the next time to talk, I'm not giving you that I'm not intentionally forcing you to do something about the dead air that's going to come after you've told me 25% of a truth. I'm going to, or 25% of a lie. I'm going to give you that opportunity to add a little bit more, to defend that lie a little bit more, to give me a little bit more information, some more convincing, so that I have a little bit more ammunition. That's just what I've learned.
That's that you said this perfectly. Like, I always come back to the investigating claims and insurance. Insurance is a very, very sophisticated industry, and for claims to be either approved or disapproved, you must have the facts which they stand very well. And conversation, it's a key for everything, because after all, I don't know how it's in US, but I said to people working for me, I'm admiring for one thing, regardless you are ex-detective or ex-military intelligence or just a PI or whatever you are. This is why I like talking to you, Jeremy, because you don't have, let's say, 50 people now standing around you as everything scripted. They even got TVs, lights and everything else. You using what you have to create best outcome. And that's a goes in investigations. You must improvise so much with what you have and adjust yourself to the situation to provide the client's best outcome. And sometimes, not sometimes, many times, conversation, as you elaborated, it's a best thing, because people have a tendency to talk, and when you don't talk, they talk, and
Right.
they fill that void, and you think yourself, interesting one to say that one didn't even ask, right? So
Right.
may I ask you a question, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's now by you. So what is your podcast about? What are you doing? What is this six figure?
So it's a bit of an evolving thing. We started this podcast off. Well, the name itself, adjusting to six figures. This was actually started off as a blog years ago, and it was a blog because I'm a freelance claims adjuster, and I've done very well as a freelance claims adjuster, and so well that I hit what I've defined as a ceiling with it, a
Yeah.
financial ceiling. And after you kind of, I hit a year where I killed myself all throughout the year, working 80 to 100 hours a week. And, I've made a ton of money that year. But by the end of the year, I found myself that, I was fat, I was out of shape. I had a very poor outlook on life. I had a bunch of money, but I had no time to even spend that money.
Hmm.
So going into the following year, I had to ask myself a question. And I always relate this to a video game because for some reason I just feel like this video game analogy is the one that makes the
Yeah.
most sense to me. You play a video game or any sort of game, anything that has an end. You've
Yes.
played the game, you've reached the end, you've seen all, you've encountered all the emotion, and now you're at the end. And you won. You beat the game. And now it's the year 2. This wasn't year 2 for me, but
Yes.
you're in the following year. Now you have a choice. You're going to play the game again and hope for the same outcome. Maybe you gain a few more pounds at the end of the next year. Maybe you have a poorer outlook on life at the end of the next year. It's because it's either that or you're going to make less money. It's one of the two. What would you rather have? So I guess that's called burnout, is what a lot of
Yes.
people define that as. So I decided to start doing something else. So I created a blog, and I just blogged about insurance, and that lasted a short time before I realized that was even more miserable than the work itself. And that led to a online school, which I have, Adjust University. And then I've decided once I was going to go into podcasting, we were going to revive Adjusting to Six Figures. And the reason why is because it was initially just going to be focused on adjusting. So we got the word adjusting in there. So it made sense. But it was also, it's that adjusting to a six-figure lifestyle. Because I personally, I didn't grow up with, obviously it wasn't communist background, but it might as well have been in certain ways, because it did not appear to be that I was going to have that attorney outcome. I wasn't going to be a doctor. I wasn't going to be any of that. But I got lucky. I worked hard, and I created a business that broke me into a six-figure, income. And so I adjusted to that new lifestyle of mine. I grew myself from being a type of person who was, womanizing at times, drug abusing, alcohol abusing, and I just didn't have any confidence in myself and any confidence in my future. So it was, I had to adjust. I had to change everything. And so I started the podcast as a means to listen to other people that had similar stories, exactly like your story. Your story, granted, so much more than most others, just from the point of view growing up in communist Yugoslavia, being pulled into the military, pulled into active duty at 18 and a half, and then staying there for 5 years, 5 or so years.
8
and
years,
then
8 years total in that new army. 8 years, 8
wow,
combat.
8 years being involved in that. I mean, but not letting the struggles, and this is the point of the podcast, is to find people that refuse to let these struggles in their life define their future. And I'll be honest with you. So I created the podcast after I created my school. I created the school because I enjoy doing the school so much more than I enjoy doing the work itself. And I still enjoy doing the school, but now I enjoy doing the podcast too. So it's been such an improvement since the very beginning. And to be able to share time with individuals like yourself and to speak on things like social engineering, to speak on things like investigating, and to speak on things like adjusting to a new lifestyle. And that's what this 6-figure lifestyle is. I call it 6 figures because that's what it started off as. And I hope one day I've got to rebrand to 7 figures and then to 8 figures. I'm already.
I have no doubt you will, Jeremy, because I sometimes like to congratulate people like yourself, because people like you make this world. People like me, we are just adjusted ourselves, and my motives was very clear in my life. I knew it when my father was dying in 1995. On his deathbed, and I'm pretty sure that was his calling his name. I forgot the guy. He said, big public speaker. Sorry, top of my head. Anyway, he said to me before he died, I wish, and I said to him, what that? He said, I wish I'd done this, 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 and this, and this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, but now it's too late. He says to me, don't miss that, Mario. Even, we're not good relationship with me, him, but that was his last words. Don't miss the one moment of the life. Do good to others and go chase your dreams. And, seeing you now, what you're saying, and that's a Jeremy makes you in my books, and I will use this so-called authority of mine after seeing, don't worry, you're not only one who was abusing drugs and everything else. I was as well. And saying these things makes you unique. And I'm inviting everybody to listen to your podcast. I'm inviting everybody to listen what you're going to say, because people saying those things just in a sense to sell themselves, but you're saying with such a kindness. And this is, you don't see me now because I'm separate video, but I'm very grateful, Jeremy, for today.
Man, Mario, I'm completely grateful to have you on. And I'd love to have you back on a podcast just to talk about interrogation. I wrote down 3 times on my notes to talk to you about interrogation and to about questioning.
Yeah, happy to talk to anytime, when you want. That's we can be, you can separately. I can guide you to the process of investigation and interrogation, and the differences between those two types of questioning, I will call. Interrogation, usually it's associating with the forced methods, and investigation, it's usually sophisticated way. But I'm happy to talk to you interrogation in communism methods and interrogations into the environment. Yes,
I'd love to do that. Well, Mario, how can, if anyone's listening and they want to learn more about you, how can they go find you? What's the last book that came out?
Last book that came out, it's called Blood, Soaked Soil, and feel free to go on Amazon, Mario Bekes, or just go on my website, www.mariobekes.com.au, which is going to guide you through my businesses and the books. But I'm very grateful, Jeremy, for today. I'm very grateful, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Mario, pleasure's all mine, my brother. Be well, be safe, and much more success. Guys, thank you for tuning in to this episode. Go check out Mario Bekes. Check out Blood-Soaked Soil. Right? That's Blood-Soaked Soil, you said, right?
Blood-Soaked Soil. That's correct, yes.
Check it out, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.